Good morning. I'm Joel Miller. I'm the interim minister here at the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. So glad to welcome you here in person and online. You are welcome here whether you walk in, stride in, maybe you rolled in. Some of us may have been carried in earlier this morning. You're welcome here whether you're young or old, whether you're lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, asexual, queer. I can't remember them all anymore, but you're welcome here because we hope to meet you where you are and to welcome you in all of your diversity, all of your beauty, and all that we do share, our longings as human beings to be alive, to be known, and to know others. You're welcome here whether you're rich or poor, male or female, or not on the binary gender at all. You're welcome here whether you are a longtime member or this is your first time. It's good to be together. Welcome to the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship.
And I'm Kathy Cacavalli, your Sunday Service Associate, and I have a few select announcements. This afternoon at 3 p.m., there will be a fundraiser to benefit the New Jersey Abortion Access Fund, including a play from Uterus, Stories from You to Us, here in the meeting room. More information can be found on Realm. We do ask that you register, but you can show up too. And donations are welcome. The Morris Area MLK Day 2023 event is on Monday, January 16th. For more information or to purchase tickets, please see the Eventbrite link in your order of service, whether you're online or in person here today. Next Sunday, January 22nd, we will be holding in-person visitor tours after the 9:30 and 11:15 a.m. services. Register by emailing your name and which tour time you'd like to attend, using the subject line, Visitors Tour, and sending it to welcome@muff.org. On January 29th at 1 p.m., join other folks from our fellowship for a conversation about sexual orientation, pronouns, and the changing view of gender identity. Contact Reverend Joe Miller or our DRE, Nick Walwork, if you have questions. On Saturday, February 4th, there will be startup training for the fellowship given by the UUA Central East Regional Office. More information about the specifics will be coming out shortly, but for an overview of the program, check out the URL that's in your order of service. Finally, Lunch Bunch gathers weekly after the 11:15 a.m. service at Nana's in Florham Park. All are welcome. Nana's is at 176 Columbia Turnpike.
Many of you have heard me talk about growing up a Unitarian Universalist, and the congregation I grew up in really found what was sacred very much in the experience of the natural world and in science. We did some learning about world religions, but I always found that when I'd hit the playground during recess at the public school I went to, I also would start hearing some about Bible stories. Adam and Eve was one of those stories, and I was always I wondered a lot about the Adam and Eve story. The story as I'd first heard it was Adam and Eve, God made Adam and Eve, put them in a garden, said, don't eat that, don't eat that. And I was thinking, why do you put it in the garden then? Because if they were my kids, or when I was a kid, the first thing I'd be like, yeah, what is that? Have a taste. As I got older, and the importance of my spiritual community, the First Unitarian Universalist Church in Columbus, Ohio, I found myself at work, and I'm thinking about First Church, but then I'm in the fellowship of this congregation that was so meaningful to me, And if I was thinking about work, I was thinking about how I could make this part of my work. And I realized that's what I needed to do, and here I am. And got to theological school, and one of the first things I really wanted to do was read the Bible, because I kind of wanted to figure, what is all of this saying? And I was so interested, I even studied some Hebrew so I could understand it in the way that the people who put it down on paper meant it. And reading the Adam and Eve story, and let me tell you, the story that I heard on the playground, or the story I kept hearing in like books and stuff, was not the story I read. The story I read was, well, in Hebrew, English translates it as God created the heavens and the earth. In the Hebrew, it's Bereshit bara Elohim, et hashemayim ve'et haaretz, and Elohim is the word, is translated as God. It's gods, it's plural. Nobody told me that. I'm looking at it, I remember saying to the professor, wait a minute, Elohim, that's plural. Yeah. There's some explanation. Really? No, it's plural. Do whatever they needed to do with that. I'm reading the Adam and Eve story again. So here Adam and Eve are in the garden. They can do anything they want. Yeah, you probably don't want to eat the apple. Okay, that's still part of the story. But they're running around, and Eve talks with the snake, and the snake says, you should try the apple and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He said, it's an amazing experience. And Eve's like, yeah, but we're not, God said, yeah, better not eat that. And the snake said, you'll be fine. She eats it. She goes, oh my gosh, look, it's so beautiful. The world is so beautiful. I've got to go talk to Adam. And she runs over to Adam and she goes, oh my God, you're naked. And Adam's like, what? What are you talking about? She said, you've got to try this. Try this. He said, wait a minute, we're not supposed to eat that. She said, it's an amazing experience. So he bites it. Oh my gosh, look at the sky. It's beautiful. The trees, that amazing tree. Oh, you're naked. Ooh. And they make themselves underwear because they're a little embarrassed. And God comes and wanders around in the garden and goes, oh, you've got underwear on? You ate the apple, didn't you? And they're like, well, yeah. And Adam, realizing that they had been disobedient, says, Eve made me do it. I hear somebody saying, right? Right. I'm like, wait a minute. This isn't about sex being evil. Where the heck did that come from? This is about Adam lying. I hear some religions, they talk about original sin and stuff like that. If there's an original sin, I think it starts with the lying. So I like to retell that story with the kids. When I was retelling it with them this morning, we got to the part about the underwear, and they're like, and I always enjoy that part, the modesty that comes with that. I'm talking this morning about sex, yes, but something bigger than that, and something that we explore together through a curriculum we call OWL, Our Whole Lives. We have been teaching sex ed in our congregations since the late 60s, and we've come to understand that we've even renamed the curriculum to Our Whole Lives because we realize sex is never just about sex. It's a small part of something much, much larger, and is a wonderful experience we have as human beings. And so this morning I share a part of that experience of what it is we do when we teach OWL and what it means for us. Glad you're here for that. I'd like to invite Mary Jane Plim up. We're going to light our chalice this morning. And I invite you to share in the words with me as we light our chalice, these words of affirmation and covenant. Love is the spirit of this fellowship. And service to this law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. The hymn I'd like to sing with you is 396. You don't really need the music, although, I sang in choirs long enough that I still like to have the music in front of me. I'm glad Brent's going to help me out because I'd like to sing it as a round. I know this rose will open, and you'll see the words right up here on the screen. And let's sing it together a couple of times to learn it, because I don't know if you know it, and there's some new folks here, so it gives us all an opportunity to hear it. And then after we've done it a couple of times, we'll start here with number 1, and Brent will lead you all as group number 2. You sing beautifully. It's a pleasure. When the children came up this morning, I had one especially intense moment. I sat down here, and a 4-year-old girl came up, and she just sat in my lap. And that was an especially lovely experience for me because, just being close to the children in that way is a real privilege. But it also very much reminded me of being a young minister 30 years ago, and when my own children would come up for the time for all ages and plop themselves in my lap, along with about half a dozen other children sometimes. I talked with them a little bit about love. Love in English is this word that has so much weight because it has to cover so much territory. The ancient Greeks, when they talked about love, they had 4 words that they used for love that we, Christian theologians especially, like to turn back to. And they're helpful in understanding our historical understandings of what love is and how we practice it. What the spiritual experience and practice of love is. The first word, philios, or the love of siblings. Brotherly love is often the traditional way of describing it. Sibling love, or the love of friendship. The city of Philadelphia, for example, phila coming from philios. It's the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia. Then there's storge. This one's not as commonly mentioned, but storge is the love of family. I have family that's very, very dear to me. I have brothers in different parts of the country who I miss a lot. Nieces and nephews who are even in more places. My children, one in upstate New York and another in D.C. An ex who is still family, lives in Rochester, New York. A current partner who's dear to me, storge, and these deep, powerful connections that come from how we create homes and households together. Agape is an important one for congregations. It's understood as sort of the love of, theists would call it the love of God. I think as humanists, we could think of it as the love of community, the love of what we do in creating music and life and the world together. Sometimes agape is what maybe that kind of love that drives us to go out and do social justice work, make the world a better place. And then there's eros, philios, storge, agape, and eros. And eros is the word from which we derive the word erotic. And it's interesting in the dictionary, eros will have the many nuances of definitions in it, but then you'll go to erotic and it's just like sexiness. And theologians, interestingly enough, most traditional theologians, they'll actually rank order these as, agape's number one and eros. Ooh, it's got sex in it, bad. It's a low level one at the very least because of sex being present in it. I didn't say that to the kids. We didn't go quite in that in depth with them, but I did say to them that we hope that their experience in this congregation is one of love, that they know when they come here that all of these people they're sitting with love them. And I know you do. You invest a lot in their well-being, even though you may not know their names. And they look to you to see how adults can be in love with one another in so many different ways. And they will take OWL classes and learn about different kinds of love and the intricacies and sometimes the difficulties of love. And hopefully that as they grow, they will take the wisdom they find in this place about love, and they will take it out into the world and share it with the world. And the way that they looked at me, I sensed that there was much they knew about that to be true, and they looked ready like they wanted to take it to class and take it off into the world right away. We celebrate milestones. We do it as a ritual, reminding one another of how we become interconnected in community, reminding one another that we are practicing a number of kinds of love every Sunday when we are together. And that to experience that love and for others to experience that love in community, sometimes we have to share where we are most vulnerable, perhaps our greatest joys, our deepest sorrows, sometimes just to be present with one another. Shari Lowe shared this morning her daughter, Sarah Bernadette Machima, is now employed at a full-time job with benefits. She will be working at the registrar's office at Emerson College in Boston. She's not given up on music, Shari points out. Her daughter has an album release concert on February 8th for her next EP. Shari says, I'm going to be in Boston. It will be in Boston, but you could see it streamed on Facebook. And actually, I was mentioning to Brent, nothing like being a musician with a job that lets you do music. And what was it? Benefits? Yeah, it doesn't hurt a thing, right? And Mary Jane, I'm grateful for her lighting our chalice this morning. She has retired. And that is a passage and a milestone for sure. And She's moving to Denver in February, and so we're sorry to see you go, Mary Jane. She's going to need some help, though, packing up and getting moved there. Looks like about February 18th. She's going to serve pizza if you'll help her come and pack. So we'll let you know more in the future orders of service and in the e-news. Don't go. Tomorrow's the day we celebrate Martin Luther King Day. His gifts to us, sacrifice even of his life for the truth he knew, for the love he had for the world. You'll see in the orders of service, whether you're online or on hand, that there's a link to some of the activities tomorrow that you can participate in. I may not be mentioning Dr. King specifically this morning, but I assure you his importance to Unitarian Universalism goes way beyond one Sunday and one weekend a year. And the candle lit this morning here. This congregation has a tradition of lighting a candle when one of its members has died. This candle is lit this morning for William George Hall. Bill is how we knew him. He died on December 6th at the age of 96. I'm told by folks here and by his family he was so very kind, solid and steady, principled, fair-minded, and really smart. He had, after he retired, had spent some time in the woods, but had moved back here in order to be close to family. And he and his wife Sylvia died about 11 years ago, and I understand he missed her terribly. He and Sylvia joined this fellowship within the first year of its founding in 1956. So they had to have joined in 1957 early, because then Sylvia, with a friend she made in this congregation, Charlene Catula, discovered this site was for sale with this mansion on it, and they bought it for the fellowship. And I'm told they didn't even ask. They just went and bought it and said, "This is a deal, you got to get it." Seems like it's worked out pretty well. Bill's presence here was one that made a difference in many lives, and we will have a memorial service for him late in February or sometime in March, and we will let you know. Spirit of life, or should I call you higher power? You know, some days I don't believe in any of that, and I know some of us don't. But some days I do. Some days I have an experience of it. Of you? I know this. I look out on these people each week, and I know how privileged, how lucky I am, because I see you there. And I see your love for the world, see your love in how they are with one another. I see the love of Bill Hall, still alive, even though he has died. I see the love of generations. I see the possibility of love as it exists in the eyes of these people before me. And the love that they shape and create for the children that sit here in front and who run to the classes with joy. The love that will shape them into adults. The love that will be here for others who find us and need us and need to know that love. And we know we're imperfect at it. We flub it. We forget to focus on it. We make assumptions about others because of how they look or speak or don't speak. But the privilege to stand here, to see you, to see these people who really mean their love and make deep commitments in so many ways, inviting one another into their homes, risking their wealth to make this love possible for the future. Tenderly engaging with one another when they know others have suffered. Passionately striding into the world when they see injustice. There's a lot of love here. May this love that lives in and through us, we aspire for it always to be a blessing. May it always shine in beauty. And may it always call us to even more love, something for which there need never be any limit. Amen. So be it. Blessed be.
Now is the time for our offering, which this week will be split 50-50 between the fellowship and the Faithify campaign to raise funds for the rehabilitation and improvement of UU churches in remote villages. Churches that can be used as evacuation shelters and community centers. The money raised will go to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Philippines. As you give generously, please enjoy our offertory music, which this morning is "O Perfect Love," performed by our pianist, Brent Geyer.
Unitarian Universalists, we aspire to embrace our diversity in its fullness when it's blessing us, when it's serving us well. When as I mentioned, when I first took our sex ed classes many years ago, it was really eyebrow-raising for a religious congregation, or in my case, I grew up in a church teaching sex ed. This is 1972. One of the things I found about that was when I would go to school afterward, the one day that we had sex ed in my junior high school, we were middle school age, and Columbus had junior high schools in those days. And my very sweet, very quiet, elderly home ec teacher was also my homeroom teacher. And the one day that we were going to do sex ed, she called in sick. And I heard she did that every year. And there was a substitute there, and the substitute came in, and she walked in a little late, and she came in and opened the book, and she said, "Oh, hell no." And so I said, excuse me. So I said to the substitute, I kind of wondered, because this was a teacher who was never absent, and she in some ways she was pretty old school. I said, "What, is today supposed to be sex ed?" And the substitute looked at me like, "Just shut up." So I said to the kids at my table in the home ec room, which is where homeroom was, I got sex ed at church. And they looked at me like, "What?" I said, "No, seriously, we took sex ed at church." I mean, we talked about things like menstruation and puberty, and the kids are like, "Whoa." They actually wanted to know, and I actually started talking about sex, and the kids at the other table were like, "Wait a minute, can we sit at the table?" And the substitute was finally like, "Okay, everybody be quiet, no talking." She just didn't want us talking. It was more than she could handle. She said, "I'm only here for one day." It's not unusual for people who grew up Unitarian Universalists to be a source of wisdom for other kids, because so often, even today, there's terrible information on the internet, or some of it's not even information, it's just gross. And there's information that kids should be getting in schools, and sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. But what they do get is they get OWL, and they get an experience of how sex is a part of something larger, an interconnected web of relationships and biology and the environment we live in and our spiritual values. It was, for me, in my experience, such a wonderful thing. And even in 1972, to learn that some people are lesbian, some people are gay, some people are bisexual, some people are straight. 1972, I was learning that. And yet, it was some years ago, 10-ish years ago, and one congregation, the director of religious education and I were working on OWL for OWL classes in the congregation for children, for youth, for young adults, and for adults. We have curricula for all ages. And so we'd put some promotional materials up for folks. And we decided as a kind of logo that we would have a clothesline, and on the clothesline was hanging a pair of boxer briefs and some panties. And, we figured that might get some attention. Oh, OWL, okay. The Sunday we had some posters up, and these promotional announcements appeared in the order of service. At coffee hour, I had a group of people surrounding me. They had to talk to me about this logo. And the first person to talk to me was an elder, this wonderful person, an important elder in the congregation, but she was a little unhappy with me about this. She said, So, Reverend Joel, I'm really kind of upset with this logo because you've taken OWL and you've made it a focus on the pubic area, and I just don't think we need to be doing that. It's bigger than that, and I'm just really uncomfortable with this sort of mid-body focus. And a man standing next to her, I think he was in maybe his late 40s, added, I too have an issue with it because I'm really upset that you would put that it's so heterocentric. I mean, there's men's boxer briefs and there's women's panties. I mean, why couldn't we have had boxer brief, or panties and panties? I mean, it's really not inclusive. And then a young woman came up, probably young 30s, and she said, I'm also not happy with it. I mean, look at those panties. They're telling me every woman to be sexy has got to be skinny, like fit in those panties. I hadn't expected to have such a strong reaction. It was just kind of a hand drawing of some underwear, but what really threw me was, not even threw me so much, but threw all of us, was the youth group, all of who've already been through OWL, at least twice because they were graduating seniors, they had kind of slowly drifted our way because they'd started hearing this conversation. And after the young woman, the 30-year-old woman, explained her frustration with the issue of how her body was supposed to be as determined by someone else, which I can sympathize with everybody on this. One of the youth said, we were listening to you just now, and I want to tell you, we have a question for you, which is, why are you all assuming that the person wearing the boxer briefs is male or the person wearing the panties is female? Actually, it saved me a lot of heartache after that. Everybody's like, oh my God, what are we going to do now? I love this reading I'm going to offer you from Audre Lorde. She's a late African-American scholar, poet, a feminist, Black, African-American. She was the mother of 2 children, an activist. She was a cancer survivor as well. And she wrote about the erotic. And when I encountered what she wrote, something clicked for me finally. This is prose from Audre Lorde's article, Uses of the Erotic. We have been raised to fear the yes within ourselves, our deepest cravings. We have come to distrust that power which rises from our deepest and non-rational knowledge. There are many kinds of power, used and unused, acknowledged or otherwise. And the erotic is a resource within each of us that lies in a deeply spiritual plane, firmly rooted in the power of our unexpressed or unrecognized being. The word erotic comes from the Greek word eros, the personification of love in all of its aspects. Eros, born of chaos, and personifying creative power and harmony. When I speak, writes Audre Lorde, when I speak of the erotic, then I speak of it as an assertion of the life force, of creative energy empowered. And that changed everything for me. Deeply rooting the experience, not just of sex, but of the sigh of seeing a beautiful artwork, or of experiencing the power of a congregation, or that amazing experience of having a child come and sit on my lap this morning. Tingles on the back of my neck at the joy and beauty of life. This is why we do OWL. This is why we want to offer ourselves and what we know about erotic wisdom, the wisdom that Audre Lorde talks about, to our children, to one another, and to the world. Now, I love the Harry Potter novels, but we named Owl before J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter, just saying. On the other hand, I like that they kind of overlap in their coolness. But that's what really Owl is about. Living our whole lives with joy, with care for one another, with accountability. Even, yes, pleasure. So as I mentioned, Christian theologians write about those 4 kinds of love. And for some reason, the erotic, because it includes sex, I'm really not quite sure. I'll be honest, I'm not that interested. Why they have to rank Eros lower. It just doesn't make sense to me. But it's important to note, just a few days ago, I got a letter from the Unitarian Universalist Faith Action of New Jersey. It's an organization created by the New Jersey Unitarian Universalist congregations, gotten together and advocate for our values and for justice in this state. It's very cool. And Jamie Thal, who has taught OWL here and been very involved with our youth over the years, was a co-signer of that letter sent to all congregations and all UU ministers in New Jersey. She explained that New Jersey recently adopted new standards for sexuality education in public schools. And Jamie and other leaders in Faith Action New Jersey are worried because these right-wing organizations have begun campaigns going to local school boards, falsely claiming that these new New Jersey standards are meant to groom children for abuse, to sexualize children unnecessarily, and to promote gender confusion. This is the part where I have to stay on my script, because if I say something, I'll regret it. I looked up New Jersey's new sex ed standards. Here's the standards, 4 of them. The goal is by the time seniors graduate from high school, they will be knowledgeable about how, 1, individuals feel about themselves, how they feel about their identity, their sexual orientation, and how that can be positively or negatively impacted by a wide variety of factors: environment, family values, religion, culture. 2, healthy individuals establish and maintain healthy relationships by utilizing positive communication and social skills. 3, there are many factors that influence how we feel about ourselves and the decisions we make. 4, there are state and federal laws which provide access for minors to sexual health care services, as well as adults, and state and federal laws that protect minors from unhealthy sexual situations. Now, I happen to know, having done a little reading and having some prior experience, these standards are grounded in good science. They're grounded in the practice of democracy, in the way that they are meant to provide a healthy education in human sexuality to as many children as possible across all of the diversities of people that live in New Jersey. And really, if someone wants to keep their child in a box and not hear the word trans, they can keep them home. Although how that's going to work, it's going to have to be one airtight box, because I don't know how you don't hear the word trans in today's culture, and I don't know. But one thing about the standards too is, yes, they're about sex, but they apply to a lot more about sex. Knowing how to keep yourself safe, how to communicate well, how culture and life interplay with one another, the importance of community and healthy relationships. It sounds a lot like OWL. It's a lot more than sex. I also want to point out, just saying, so these right-wing organizations that are lying about those standards, The places where they have the most effect, those states where they have reduced the standards of sexuality education to just say no, abstinence-only education, those states have teen pregnancy rates and sexually transmitted infection rates 6 times higher than in states like New Jersey or New York or Massachusetts, where there are healthy standards for sexuality education. What is with the lying? The groups want us to feel terror about our bodies, about our children's well-being, and so dishonest about it. It's interesting, you know, we have the concert that's happening this afternoon from Uterus. I like to kind of play on words with that. The reaction that, a way of understanding our reaction to the ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade, or women's rights to make decisions about their bodies, procreation, and babies. And I read the Alito's, I hesitate to call it anything coherent because it really wasn't. It was the crappiest argument I'd ever seen. And he went back and quoted some 13th century guy who also wrote about hitting women with sticks and weird stuff. Why the terror? I don't know. And in some ways, I really don't care. It's just terrorizing, and it's not okay. Maybe they're afraid. The erotic has a lot of power. And sometimes, as I've seen Native American people call it, it can be a kind of power that is beautiful and dangerous. A number of Native American peoples, Native American nations in the United States, especially in the Southwest, tell stories about a mythic figure known as Coyote. Coyote's a trickster figure, and he tends to be pretty lusty. This is a character who appears often in conversations about sexuality in these many cultures. But the interesting thing about Coyote's not a good or a bad figure either, per se. He's just chaotic. He's a force of nature, a symbol of powerful impulses, sometimes impulses that we experience ourselves. We might, from our hormones, be experiencing lust, the erotic spirit, or maybe not, or maybe be surprised to be experiencing it, or not. But what happens in the stories, now, let me tell you the story. So there's this story of Coyote. He's at the edge of a river drinking. He's thirsty, and being Coyote, he's drinking lustily, because that's what Coyote does. And he's drinking so lustily, he falls into the river. He comes up for air like, he's trying to breathe. And as he's breathing, he notices there's 2 women, human women, bathing downstream a little bit, and they haven't seen him, they haven't noticed him. He wants to just kind of float down and stare at the women as he goes downstream. But he knows that they're not going to tolerate that. They're going to wrap themselves up in their clothes and just leave because they don't want to be stared at like that. So he changes himself into a beautiful piece of driftwood so he can float downstream, and that's what he does. And one of the women picks up the stick and says, "Wow, that is a really attractive stick." And the other woman says, "Can I see that?" And she picks it up and she goes, "That's too attractive." She throws it back into the river. Too late. They're both pregnant. Typical Coyote story. And that's the thing about sex and eros, perhaps more than the other forms of love, is that it can be a surprisingly chaotic experience, eros. It is powerful. I think of it as an elemental force that sometimes precedes religion itself. So, as Audre Lorde was saying, or as I find with kids who are taking OWL, with this primordial force that sometimes arises in us in unexpected ways, unpredictable times, we have obligations about how to be accountable for how we allow that power to come forth, how we use it or don't. Audre Lorde goes on to call on us to have erotic wisdom. And I really came to understand the importance of erotic wisdom because having taught OWL to teenagers, it's not unusual for them, for a teenager to ask their OWL teachers, so when do I know when I can start having sex with other people? When do I know it's okay? And usually what I want to say is, well, it's good to have a lot of erotic wisdom. And they'll, if I were to say that, they'd just look at me like, what? What is that? So we teach our kids to think and ask questions. That's what we do as Unitarian Universalists. And then we try to help them to think and ask questions about sexuality from a good, knowledgeable understanding, so that they can get to the point that they understand that erotic wisdom includes understanding how our bodies work. Erotic wisdom includes understanding how we are accountable for our actions and how we can protect one another. Yeah, we show them what a condom is and what it looks like. If you can't go out to the drugstore and buy a condom, you're not ready for sex. How to talk with other people about really intense feelings. If you can't talk to a person you're interested in about what you might want to do together sexually, you're probably not ready for sex yet. So I explained that these are some of the aspects of erotic wisdom. And then having said that, I explained, when you collect enough of that wisdom, you get a pretty strong sense of when you might be ready. But I have one last guide for you. I will say to them, you'll know you're ready when you can talk to your parents about your decision that you're ready for sex. And so, some of us nod. And I had one mother come up to me after I said that in a service once, and she said, that probably will happen with my kids, but let me tell you that if that were the guide for me and my Catholic mother, I would still be a virgin. Perhaps another and a simple phrase that I learned from an 84-year-old Unitarian Universalist about 35 years ago, Art. Art said to me, you know you're going into it with the right mindset when you know you're going to be making good memories. Make good memories. He actually spoke a little more about what that meant. He said, let me tell you something, Joel. We'd moved Art out of his house. His wife had died about 5 years before, and he missed her terribly. And he really didn't want to move out of the house, but he knew he had to. And he was moving into a place that had good assisted living care. And when he moved in, he just rediscovered the erotic, and so did a number of his neighbors in this assisted living facility, and he started dating, and he was having a great time, and he was trying to make all the good memories he could. He ruefully pointed out to me, however, that age does not automatically confer all the wisdom you might need all the time. Apparently, there was a little bit of drama around the dating and who was dating who, and I won't go much more into it than that, but he did say to me, let me tell you, Joel, if anybody says of teens that they're experiencing puppy love, it's wrong. It's an unfair insult, because what I'm experiencing now is puppy love, if that's what you call it. I'm feeling the same, well, he cursed a lot. I feel the same damn way about all of this lovemaking that I felt when I was a teenager. We should give teenagers the same respect that we give to anybody else. So what I say to teenagers, can you understand and accept the consequences of your actions? Can you make good memories? I've noticed that teenagers lately, with all of the information they have access to, are more likely to say, I'm willing to accept it, but I'm not sure I can understand it, which is different than it used to be, where the teenager would say, sure I can. The guides for teens really, though, are guides for people of all ages. Are we able to speak clearly with others? Can we practice safe sex? Can we tell others we're in relationships with what feels good and what feels bad? Can we be in relationship without hurting one another? And you know what? You could apply all of those in some ways, even to situations that aren't about sex. It's just good erotic wisdom and a larger kind of love. The deeds of sex are brief, the physical pleasures fleeting, always calling to us. But the loves and the stories that surround sex, larger, ongoing, the poetry, the intrigue and complexities of romance, the mystery of attraction, the grief of unrequited love or desire, the practice of forgiveness, and the way in which Eros gives us the wisdom to practice also agape and philios. And ultimately, that inevitable complexity that there are consequences to saying yes, and sometimes we cannot even truly predict them. This is something about what erotic wisdom looks like. It is our hope that in OWL, that we and the children that we are caring for, the teens that we are caring for, will learn as much erotic wisdom as they can in this time here, that they will see it in practice among us, and that it will help us shape what I imagine with you, what I long for with you, this light, this love that I see that's been here for generations and will continue for generations. A love that redirects the raw creative energy of life into a world filled with blessings. Keep making good memories. Keep on loving. I'd like to sing with you now. It's number 368 if you are using the hymn book. And there's two parts to this. And I'm singing the lower one, and Brent will, so I'm singing what's up there. But if you want to get the book out because you want to sing the top part, I invite you to do that too. And we'll sing through 4 times because there's 4 different words we use within it. I invite you to stand in body or spirit as we sing our closing hymn. Go now in peace, deeply regard one another, truly listen to one another, speak what each of you must speak of, and be ready in every moment to disarm your heart, to open it, because we can live as if the realm of love had already begun. And so you have. Go in peace, be in peace. We will be together again.